Imagine, for just a moment, that you are standing on the edge of a staggeringly high, sunlit cliff.
Okay.
The breeze is incredibly fresh. It's biting almost.
Hmm.
And the silence around you isn't empty, It's electric. It has weight.
Right, it's a heavy silence.
Exactly. Now, look behind you. Stretching out as far as the eye can see is this massive, intricate, almost suffocating framework of metal and wood.
The scaffolding.
Yeah, the scaffolding that you have painstakingly built over the course of your entire life. Look closely at it. That scaffolding is like your meticulously color-coded calendar.
Oh, yeah, your morning routines.
Right, your habit trackers, your sleep data. It's the precise amount of water you force yourself to drink every day.
It's all your discipline, basically.
Yeah, your discipline, your coping mechanisms, therapy breakthroughs. It's your perfectly optimized, white-knuckled grip on your own existence.
Because you built that, and it kept you safe.
It totally kept you safe. It got you up the mountain.
But then, you turn around, you face the edge of the cliff again, you look out, and there is absolutely no scaffolding in front of you. None.
Just the drop.
Just the open sky. Endless, unscripted, terrifyingly open possibility. There are no rungs to grab onto. There's no checklist for what comes next.
And that feeling, that precise mixture of profound awe and, honestly, absolute stomach-dropping terror.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
That is the exact transition we're unpacking today. We're crossing what the source material for this deep dive calls the threshold of the invisible.
The threshold of the invisible. I love that term.
It's so good. We are taking a massive stack of texts, audio notes, and architectural metaphors, and we're looking at the exact moment where the rules of personal evolution they completely break down and rebuild themselves.
Because everything that got you to the edge of the cliff will absolutely not help you navigate the sky.
Not even a little bit.
Right. The first part of this journey, all that scaffolding we just talked about, it was about self-regulation.
The concrete stuff.
Exactly. The concrete, the measurable, the physical tuning of your own machinery. But the transition we're exploring today is the leap into the unseen.
The unseen, okay.
It's the shift from treating your life like a complicated engine that you have to manually operate, to treating it like a symphony that you participate in.
Oh, wow.
And that requires an entirely different psychological and physiological operating system.
I really want to dive straight into this symphony metaphor because the text spends a lot of time mapping out the transition from merely practicing these optimized behaviors to actually embodying them.
It does, yeah.
And it breaks it down into these distinct musical components because you don't just jump straight into playing the concerto.
No, of course not.
You have to start with the raw acoustic reality of the instrument.
Right. And the progression the author uses here is brilliant because it perfectly mirrors our neurology. The foundation is described as the steadfast drum.
The drum.
Yeah, that's your sensory literacy. Think of it as the rhythm section. Before you can play a complex melody, before you can join an orchestra, you have to be able to hold a basic, unwavering beat.
So, in human terms, what does that actually look like?
In human terms, this is basic interoception. It's asking, can you actually feel the tension gathering in your jaw before it turns into a migraine?
Oh.
Can you feel the specific texture of your socks against your skin right now? Can you feel the ambient temperature of the room?
Which, most people are so completely severed from their physical form that they couldn't even tell you they were thirsty until they were actively dehydrated.
Exactly. The drum is the foundational hardware check. It's waking up the nerve endings.
It's realizing you actually occupy a physical space.
Yes. And once that rhythm is established, then you introduce the melody.
Okay, the melody.
This is where the mind begins to align with the body's rhythm, instead of the mind operating like a tyrannical boss shouting orders at the body.
Like, go to sleep, stop feeling anxious, digest this food faster.
Exactly. Instead of that, the mind starts to harmonize with the physical form. But, that's still just the practice phase. That's still you sitting in a room playing scales.
Right.
The threshold, the real shift, happens when we reach what the text calls the resonance.
The resonance.
Yeah, this is improvisation. And it introduces a concept that completely dismantles the self-improvement industry. It's called the myth of practice.
Okay, the idea that we aren't supposed to just practice these mindfulness techniques forever, which honestly feels like a huge relief.
It really does.
Because I know people who treat their meditation practice like a competitive sport.
Oh, totally.
They are so stressed out about being mindful that it entirely defeats the purpose.
That is exactly the trap of the scaffolding. We become professional practicers. The ego kind of co-ops the practice.
Right. Like, look how good I am at meditating.
Exactly. But the ultimate goal of all this sensory tracking, all the breathing exercises, it isn't to get a gold star in embodiment. The goal is to dissolve the rigid, artificial separation between me, the consciousness floating somewhere behind my eyes, and my body, the meat vehicle I'm supposedly driving.
The meat vehicle, I love that.
At the stage of resonance, you stop playing the instrument. You become the music.
Oh,
The
wow.
practice stops being a verb, something you do for 20 minutes a day on a cushion, and it becomes your baseline state of existence.
The source text grounds this in a beautifully mundane example, which I think is super helpful. It's not about sitting on a mountaintop. It's about a person standing in their kitchen holding a coffee mug.
Yes, the coffee mug.
Now, a normal, non-integrated person, which is, let's be honest, most of us, most of the time, is trapped inside what the text calls the user interface.
The user interface, yeah.
We are in our heads, looking out through our eye holes at the coffee mug as if it's an object out there in the distance. We aren't feeling the mug. We are narrating the mug.
Right, we're engaging in predictive coding.
Predictive coding.
Yeah, so our brains are incredibly lazy from an evolutionary standpoint.
Fair enough.
To conserve energy, the brain doesn't actually process every sensory detail of the coffee mug. It just pulls up a memory file labeled coffee mug, projects that expectation onto the physical object, and then immediately moves on to worrying about the 9 emails we have to send by 9 a.m.
We're basically hallucinating our reality based on past data.
Exactly. We aren't really there.
But the traveler at the stage of resonance, the person who has crossed this threshold, completely collapses that distance. There's no gap between the observer and the observed.
They're fully participating.
Right, participating in the physics of the moment. They feel the exact radiating heat of the ceramic against the skin of their palms. They notice the specific, unrepeatable angle of the morning light hitting the dark liquid.
They're receiving the chemical compounds of the roast through their olfactory nerves in real time.
To simply be with the coffee requires the complete integration of the mind and the body.
And it forces the default mode network, that part of the brain responsible for our constant neurotic time traveling into the past and future, to temporarily quiet down.
You are no longer managing your life. You are experiencing it.
Which is a profound shift.
It sounds incredibly peaceful. But let's raise the stakes a bit. Because being deeply present with inanimate objects like coffee mugs is one thing.
Sure.
Where this framework gets genuinely disruptive is when we apply it to other human beings.
Oh, absolutely.
The text explores this through a highly relatable scenario. You're meeting a friend for coffee. Your friend sits down across from you, lets out a breath, and delivers the ultimate social script. They say, "I'm fine."
Ah, yes. The most common lie spoken in the English language.
Right. Now, if I'm operating entirely in my user interface, if I'm stuck in that cognitive, literal, narrating brain, I hear those literal words and I accept the surface data.
You take it at face value.
Exactly. I process the vocabulary, I check the box that says friend is fine, and I seamlessly pivot to talking about my own problems. I am interacting with the text, not the subtext.
But an embodied person, someone operating in that state of resonance, completely bypasses that superficial data exchange. They engage in a biological process called neuroception.
Neuroception.
Right. This is a term coined by Dr. Stephen Porges, and it is vital to understanding this threshold. Neuroception describes how our neural circuits assess risk and safety in our environment and in other people, completely beneath the level of conscious awareness.
Wait, so it's not a cognitive thought. It's not me thinking, my friend looks sad.
No, not at all. It happens milliseconds before your conscious brain even registers the thought.
Oh, wow.
When you are deeply tuned, you aren't just listening with your auditory cortex, you are listening with your vagus nerve.
Okay.
You're listening with your entire autonomic nervous system. Your nervous system feels the micro tremor in their vocal cords.
That's wild.
It tracks the subtle slump in their posture, the shallowness of their breathing, the minute muscular tension around their eyes. Your mirror neurons are firing, physically simulating their internal state within your own body.
So you receive the full, unedited broadcast, regardless of what words are actually coming out of their mouth.
Precisely. You feel what they feel.
You are picking up the invisible signal, which is incredibly powerful, but also, exhausting. I want to push back on this a little.
Go for it.
We spend so much time in that cognitive, thinking user interface brain because it's highly efficient.
It is.
It filters out the noise. If I have to walk through the world feeling the suppressed trauma and physical tension of every single person I buy coffee from or sit next to on the subway, I'm going to burn out in a day.
Yeah, that's a very real concern.
We need our scaffolding. We need discipline to just get through the week. Does this somatic listening, this full body resonance, essentially just turn us into raw, bleeding heart empaths floating around feeling everybody's vibes?
That is the most common fear when people approach this threshold, and it is a crucial misunderstanding.
Okay, lay it on me.
Resonance doesn't eliminate discipline, it evolves it.
It evolves it.
It doesn't mean you lose your boundaries. It means your boundaries become dynamic instead of rigid. Think about the nature of rigid discipline for a second.
Okay.
Rigid discipline is forcing yourself to do something you intrinsically do not want to do. It is the mind bullying the body.
Right. It's saying, I don't care that you're exhausted. We are going to the gym because the spreadsheet says so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which works
Yeah.
until it doesn't.
Until your body rebels and you tear a muscle or have a massive panic attack.
Because rigid discipline is fundamentally based on a lack of trust. You don't trust your organism, so you have to micromanage it.
Right. You're white-knuckling the steering wheel.
But when you develop somatic listening, discipline transforms into wisdom.
Wisdom.
Yes. Wisdom is simply the ability to respond accurately to reality.
Yeah.
If you are deeply attuned, you don't have to force yourself to rest. You feel the biological necessity of rest, and you honor it.
That makes sense.
You don't have to force yourself to focus. You tune your system to naturally engage. And regarding other people.
Yeah, what about the friend at the coffee shop?
Right. Neuroception doesn't mean you take on their pain. It means you have accurate data.
Okay, so you aren't absorbing it, you're just reading it.
Exactly. You can say to your friend, you say you're fine, but your breathing is shallow and your shoulders are up to your ears. What is actually happening?
Oh, I see. You are responding to the truth of the room rather than the polite fiction.
Exactly. It moves us from superficial transactions to profound, reality-based connection.
So you move from fighting your own nature to collaborating with it. The drum is steady, the melody is aligned, you are resonating.
You're in the pocket.
But this assumes the music makes sense.
Ah.
What happens when the music stops making logical sense? What happens when all your somatic tuning, all your wisdom, and all your beautiful resonance suddenly isn't enough to solve the problem in front of you?
That's the real test.
Because there is a moment where the scaffolding completely ends. That brings us to the real cliff's edge.
The transition into the unseen force. The realization that you are not the one writing the music.
The text sets this realization up with an incredibly vivid, almost haunting scene. Let's talk about the 3 a.m. moment.
The witching hour.
It's 3 a.m., the classic witching hour of existential reckoning. The traveler is sitting awake at the kitchen table. The house is dark.
The city outside is completely dead.
Yeah, and the only sound is the low mechanical hum of the refrigerator in the background, and the traveler is just sitting there in the silence, suddenly acutely aware of their own heartbeat.
Thump, thump.
Steady, relentless, it's pumping gallons of blood, oxygenating tissues, sustaining their very existence, and they suddenly realize they aren't doing it.
They aren't asking it to beat.
Right. It's a moment of profound psychological vertigo.
It really is. It's the sudden, undeniable realization that you are not running the show. That noisy narrator in your head that thinks it's the CEO of your life.
The user interface.
Exactly. It's really just the PR department.
The PR department, that is so good.
It takes credit for everything, but it actually runs almost nothing. And this 3 a.m. moment prompts the ultimate grounding question of this entire philosophy.
Which is?
What animates?
What animates.
Right.
We understand that the physical body is the vessel, the meat, the bones, the nervous system. We understand that conscious awareness is the light illuminating the room. But what is the electricity?
What is the current that powers the entire grid?
Yeah.
It forces us to confront the limits of our own agency. Think about something as mundane as getting a paper cut on your finger.
Okay, a paper cut.
What precisely heals that cut? You don't sit in a chair, furrow your brow, and manually instruct your blood vessels to constrict.
Right. I'm not up there going, all right, platelets, deploy.
Exactly. You don't consciously direct fibroblasts to start laying down a new collagen matrix.
Not at all.
The healing happens completely outside your jurisdiction. It is a biological miracle operating autonomously. It is happening to you. It is a life force operating through you.
It's the stark realization that we do not generate the life force. We don't manufacture the electricity. We are merely hosting it.
And that realization shatters the ego
Totally shatters it.
because our modern culture worships the illusion of the self-made
Oh,
individual.
absolutely. The hustle culture.
Right. We are told that if we just optimize enough, hustle enough, biohack our routines, we can become the absolute masters of our universe.
But the 3 a.m. realization at the kitchen table completely destroys that illusion. It is intensely humiliating to the ego.
It is.
But simultaneously, as the text points out, it is the most liberating realization a human being can have.
Because if you are generating the electricity, you don't have to carry the weight of the world.
Exactly. The exhaustion that plagues modern society is the exhaustion of trying to manually operate the autonomic machinery of existence.
We are trying to control outcomes that are completely outside our purview.
We really are. When you realize you are just the host, you can put the burden down. You just have to maintain the vessel. You just have to keep the receiver tuned.
Keep the receiver tuned. That's a perfect way to phrase it.
Think about it like a smartphone. You can go out and buy a $1,000 piece of glass and silicon.
Sure.
You can charge the lithium-ion battery to 100%. You can spend hours customizing your home screen, organizing your apps into perfectly color-coded folders, updating the operating system.
They look perfect.
Right. You can optimize the hardware and the software to perfection. That is what we do with our self-improvement scaffolding. We are optimizing our personal device.
Oh,
But if there's no invisible Wi-Fi signal, if there's no cellular network carrying data through the empty air, your optimized device is essentially a very expensive, very shiny paperweight.
it can play the games it already has downloaded,
Yeah.
but it cannot connect to anything new. It cannot receive.
Right. The 3 a.m. moment at the kitchen table is the realization that we have spent our entire lives obsessing over the apps.
Obsessing over the apps. Wow.
We've been aggressively managing the battery life, deleting old files, upgrading the screen, and we have completely ignored the invisible ambient signal that actually powers the connection to the rest of the universe.
We have mistaken the receiver for the broadcast.
Yes, we mistook the receiver for the broadcast.
And this is the crux of the transition. If we aren't the ones generating the signal, if the Wi-Fi is just out there in the ether, how do we interact with it?
How do we ensure we're actually connected?
Exactly. How do we ensure we are actually connected to it? The text provides two massive paradigm-shifting metaphors to help us navigate this new reality.
Let's hear them.
The concert hall and the driver versus the network.
Let's pull apart the concert hall first, because it builds directly on the earlier musical metaphors we were talking about.
Right. So the first phase of our development, all that scaffolding and sensory tuning, was akin to learning to play a perfectly crafted Stradivarius violin. You spent years mastering the fingering, bowing techniques, keeping the strings taut, ensuring the wood is pristine. That is mastering your own physical and mental instrument.
Getting the instrument ready.
But the second phase is realizing that the instrument is entirely dependent on its environment. It requires an understanding of the concert hall itself.
The acoustic architecture.
Yes, it is acknowledging the acoustic architecture of the room, and most importantly, the invisible field of air molecules that allows the sound waves to travel from the vibrating string to the tympanic membrane of the audience's ears.
Because no matter how perfectly you play that Stradivarius, if you are floating in the vacuum of space, you will make absolutely zero music.
You require a medium. Your individual effort means nothing without the unseen force to carry the vibration. You can't just focus on the violin anymore. You have to consider the air.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
It is. And the second metaphor, the driver versus the network, takes this abstract acoustic concept and makes it incredibly practical for our daily lives.
Break that one down for me.
Think about learning to drive. That first phase of self-regulation is learning how to operate the vehicle.
Okay, steering, pedals.
You learn to steer. You learn how much pressure to put on the brake. You learn to constantly scan your dashboard for warning lights.
So in psychological terms, this is emotional regulation.
Exactly. Mindfulness, cognitive behavioral therapy, it's making sure you aren't crashing your car into a ditch.
It's keeping your hands at 10 and 2.
Yes. But here is the devastating truth. You can be the most emotionally regulated, perfectly mindful, trauma-informed driver on the planet.
Okay.
Your car can be in pristine condition. But if you do not understand the city's GPS network, if you cannot read the macro flow of traffic, if you are completely disconnected from the broader grid,
You are still going to end up totally lost.
you are going to be sitting in a gridlocked intersection, perfectly regulated, but completely stuck.
You're just driving perfectly in the wrong direction.
Exactly.
I want anyone listening right now to genuinely hold that image because I think it explains the pervasive burnout of our era.
Oh, absolutely.
You know exactly what this feels like. You are doing everything right. You are waking up early, you are journaling, you are tracking your macros, you are communicating your boundaries perfectly.
You are operating your vehicle flawlessly.
Flawlessly. But your life still feels like a traffic jam. Your career is stalled, your relationships feel out of sync, and you have this low-grade, vibrating anxiety that no amount of green juice can fix.
Because you are optimizing the individual node, but you are completely disconnected from the network.
Right. We treat our lives like isolated, closed systems. We think that if we just try harder within our own little bubble, we can force a result.
But the network operates on a completely different set of physical laws.
Yeah.
You cannot force traffic to move by gripping your steering wheel tighter.
But wait, I have to step in here and defend the ego for a second.
Please do.
Because everything in our modern culture rewards the driver. We venerate the people who grip the steering wheel the tightest, the billionaires, the tech founders, the relentless hustlers. The cultural narrative is that they impose their will on the universe.
That is the narrative, yes.
Our egos love the checklist because it provides the illusion of safety. If I check all my boxes, bad things won't happen to me.
Right.
So stepping into the network, trusting the acoustics of the concert hall, it sounds a lot like giving up your agency. It sounds like handing over the keys and just hoping for the best.
And that fear is entirely justified. The text doesn't sugarcoat this at all.
Yeah.
Stepping off the cliff is terrifying.
It's completely counterintuitive to how we're taught to succeed.
It requires the active abandonment of your most cherished illusion, the illusion of total control.
Ouch.
You have to realize that you are no longer the lone, heroic protagonist fighting against a hostile universe. You are a single participant in a vast, interconnected ecosystem.
A participant.
Yes, the forces shaping your life are infinitely larger than your personal willpower. And to survive this transition, to actually plug your car into the GPS network, you have to drop the weapon that got you here.
You have to drop your discipline.
You have to drop it.
Which, to someone who has spent a decade building their discipline, sounds like absolute heresy.
I know.
It sounds like a recipe for chaos. If I drop my discipline, my inbox piles up, my health deteriorates, my life falls apart. But the text explicitly states that the time for strict discipline is over. How do we reconcile that?
By understanding what discipline actually is. The text clarifies that discipline is strictly for the instrument.
Okay, for the
Instrument. Discipline is maintenance. It keeps the strings tuned. It gets you to the gym to maintain the meat vehicle. It pays the bills on time. It is necessary housekeeping.
Right.
But discipline cannot write the symphony. Discipline cannot force the universe to yield to your desires. When you enter the network, the challenge is no longer about forcing an outcome. The new challenge is surrender.
Surrender.
And the text defines surrender in a very specific, deeply challenging way. It defines it as trust without proof.
Trust without proof. That phrase alone is enough to make the modern rational mind break out in hives.
Oh,
We demand data. We demand guarantees. Give me the ROI on my trust.
because the ego operates like an accountant. The ego says, if I suffer enough through my discipline, if I put in my 10,000 hours, I have earned my outcome. I have bought my success.
It views the universe as a giant cosmic vending machine.
Exactly. You put in the coins of hard work and discipline, and you get out the soda of success, love, and health.
And when the vending machine jams...
When you do all the right things, but you still get sick, or the business still fails, or the partner still leaves, the ego feels cheated. It gets furious.
Well, because it thinks the contract was breached. But there was no contract.
Not at all.
Okay, let me really play a skeptic here.
Go for it.
Because the word surrender, especially in corporate, Western, or even self-improvement cultures, is incredibly loaded. It is synonymous with weakness.
It is.
It means waving a white flag. It implies defeat. If I am facing a toxic work environment or a health crisis or a failing relationship, is this philosophy really telling me to just surrender? To become a passive passenger?
If I just surrender to a bad situation, I'm going to get crushed by it. This is the most critical distinction in the entire text, and their author vehemently clarifies it. Surrender is emphatically not passivity.
Thank goodness.
Passivity is collapsing. Passivity is apathy. Surrender, in this context, is defined as active trust.
Active trust. How does that work mechanically?
The text uses a brilliant, visceral visual concept called the two-handed gesture.
This is where the theory hits the pavement. Let's break down this gesture.
Imagine yourself standing up and holding both of your hands out in front of you. Hand one is open and extended forward.
Okay.
This is the hand of offering. This hand represents your intention, your physical effort, your skill, your boundaries. It is you saying to the universe, this is what I bring to the table. This is the absolute best of my ability. This is the work I have done.
So you don't drop this hand.
You do not ever drop this hand. You do not collapse. You still show up fully to your life.
You still do the research, you still go to therapy, you still have the difficult conversation. You don't just sit on your couch, declare you have surrendered, and wait for the universe to magically deposit $1 million into your bank account.
Exactly. The first hand is your agency, but the magic and the terror lies in the second hand.
The second hand.
The second hand is palm down, releasing. This hand represents your attachment to the exact outcome.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
It is actively releasing the desperate need to control how and when your effort is rewarded. It is you saying, I offer my best effort with my first hand, and with my second hand, I trust the network to process it. I release my dictatorship over the results.
It's holding a profound contradiction simultaneously. Extreme effort paired with extreme release.
Active trust. It is doing your absolute best, pouring your soul into the violin, and then stepping back to let the acoustic architecture of the concert hall carry the sound wherever it needs to go.
To really drive this two-handed gesture home, the source text actually abandons the classical symphony metaphor entirely.
It does, yes.
Because, let's be honest, a classical symphony is incredibly rigid. You have a conductor standing on a podium, barking orders at a terrified orchestra, expecting every single musician to play the exact note written on the page at the exact millisecond required.
That is an ego's fantasy of how life should work.
The symphony is the ultimate illusion of control. So the text shifts the metaphor. Life is not a classical symphony. Life is a jazz club.
It is entirely improvisational.
You step onto the stage at the jazz club. You bring your instrument, that is your phase one discipline, your tune scaffolding, your skills.
Right.
You and the other musicians agree on a basic key and a tempo. That is your intention. But everything else, every note that happens next is pure co-creation.
You cannot force the basses to play what you want them to play.
Exactly. If the drummer suddenly changes the time signature, you don't stop the song and scream at them for violating your perfectly optimized spreadsheet.
You'd get laughed off the stage.
You adapt. You listen to the room with that full-body somatic resonance we talked about earlier. If someone takes off on a wild, unexpected solo, you don't fight them. You drop into the pocket, you support them, and you let a completely new, unscripted piece of music emerge.
You are offering your supreme skill with one hand and releasing control of the final song with the other.
It requires dynamic collaboration with reality as it is, not as you demand it to be.
And this framework directly challenges whoever's listening right now. Think about a current massive problem in your life.
Oh, here we go.
Think about the thing that woke you up at 3 a.m. last night. The thing you are white-knuckling. What are you desperately trying to control right now that is fundamentally not yours to control?
That is a brutal question, because the answer is usually everything.
Are you trying to control how your partner reacts to your boundaries? Are you trying to force a hiring manager to give you a job? Are you trying to aggressively dictate the exact timeline of your physical healing?
We all do it.
When you apply the two-handed gesture to that specific problem, it completely transforms your physiological state. It shifts your nervous system out of the panicked, rigid thought loop of, this should not be happening, how do I stop it?
And moves you into what?
And moves you into the empowered, curious question of, since this is objectively happening, how can I best move with it? What is my next note in this jazz song?
Since this is happening, how can I best move with it? That simple phrasing completely short-circuits the victim complex.
It really does.
It bypasses the it's not fair complaint department of the human brain. It acknowledges reality, accepts the traffic jam, and puts you right back on the stage at the jazz club, fully resourced and ready to improvise.
It restores your true agency, which is how you respond, while stripping away your false agency, which is your delusion that you can control the universe.
And this brings us to the ultimate, profound realization of our deep dive today. This is the choice we all have to make when we finally step out of the scaffolding and into that invisible field.
It's the big leap.
Let's retrace the massive territory we've just covered. We started by looking at the painstaking work of tuning the instrument, moving from basic mechanical sensory tracking to the profound state of resonance where you actually become the music.
Collapsing the distance between your mind and your reality.
Exactly. We sat at the kitchen table in the dead of night and realized with a shock That we are not the electricity. We are simply the vessel hosting the life force.
We walked out of our isolated, meticulously optimized practice rooms and stepped into the vast acoustic reality of the concert hall.
Realizing we have to plug our perfectly tuned vehicles into the broader chaotic GPS network of human existence.
And finally, we traded the blunt instrument of our rigid discipline for the terrifying elegance of the two-handed gesture.
The active surrender of trusting without proof. We learned to step down from the conductor's podium.
We stopped trying to bully reality into submission, and we started playing the jazz.
So the question to you, navigating your life right now, is this. Are you finally willing to put down the baton? Are you willing to look at the unscripted sky, drop the illusion of control, and simply let the music play through you?
Because that is the fundamental evolutionary shift this source material is pointing toward.
It is the necessary evolution from being a user who is just desperately clicking buttons on an interface, to an architect who builds the scaffolding, to ultimately becoming a true participant in the dynamic flow of reality.
It is a profound shift in identity.
Yeah.
And to leave you with something to really metabolize over the coming days, I want to introduce a final lingering concept from the very end of the text.
Okay, what is it?
It's an architectural metaphor called the threshold song, and it deals with the concept known as the handler of handlers.
Handler of handlers. It sounds incredibly esoteric, almost mystical.
It sounds mystical, but it is a ruthlessly practical tool for psychological unblocking.
I'm intrigued.
It's a way of mapping the nested architecture of our lives. Think about the physical mechanics of a doorway. A door doesn't just float magically in empty space. A door is held in place by a frame, the threshold.
Right. It needs a structure to hinge on.
But the frame doesn't float in space either. The frame is held up by the walls of a room. The room is held within the larger blueprint of a house. The house is anchored to a foundation, and the foundation is held by the earth itself.
It is an infinite nesting of context. Every structure is held by a larger structure.
Exactly.
Okay, I can visualize the physical architecture, but how does this translate to our internal landscape? How does this help me when I'm stuck?
Apply this nested architecture to a threshold in your own life. Think of a chronic block, a deep-seated fear or destructive behavioral pattern that you just cannot seem to break, no matter how much discipline you apply.
We all have one of those.
You are standing there, furiously pushing against the locked door. But the concept of the handler of handlers asks, who holds the holder? What macro context is keeping that specific door shut?
What's the room around the door?
Right. The text argues that your immediate, localized fear. The door is held in place by a deeper underlying belief, the room. Perhaps it's the subconscious belief that if you fail, you are unworthy of love.
Oh, wow.
And that belief, that room, is held within an even deeper history of conditioning or childhood trauma, the house.
So if I just keep attacking the door, if I just try to use brute force discipline to stop people-pleasing or to stop procrastinating, I am entirely fighting the symptom.
You are ignoring the structure that requires the door to exist in the first place.
I'm fighting the hinges while ignoring the house.
Exactly. The next time you find yourself aggressively pushing against a closed door in your life, exhausting yourself with discipline, I want you to stop.
Take your hands off the door.
Look around. Ask yourself, what is the architecture of the room that requires this door to be shut? Because if you renovate the room, the door takes care of itself.
If you change the foundational belief, the immediate fear dissolves. You don't have to break the door down. You just dismantle the frame.
You stop fighting the threshold, and you start transforming the context.
That is an incredibly powerful place to land. We are standing right back on that sunlit cliff edge. The heavy, exhausting scaffolding of our forced discipline is behind us.
The unscripted, terrifyingly beautiful open sky is ahead.
The invisible force is waiting for you to tune your receiver. The remote is firmly in your hand. The source code of your operating system is wide open.
Time to play the jazz.
Take just one of the concepts we unpacked today, whether it's feeling the literal heat of the coffee mug, recognizing the invisible Wi-Fi signal animating your life, stepping onto the stage of the jazz club, practicing the immense courage of the two-handed gesture, or analyzing the architecture of the handler of handlers and physically install it into your life today.
Don't just think about it. Resonate with it.
We will see you in the next deep dive.